Okay, make sure you have your lab handout sheet. We're looking on page 4 for this one. Page 4 is going to start off with the scapula. And here's the scapula. On your sheet, don't worry about number 1, the body. The body is just the main portion, okay? So we look at some words. The first one is the spine, and you can see that the spine raises up off the back of this scapula. It's this portion right here. This is the spine. And at the end of the spine, this swollen structure here is called the acromion process. Okay, the acromion process. And we're going to, let's say, look at another slide. Let's look at that. I think it's better on this one. Here we go. Here's the spine. You can see on the back of this scapula. See, it's the one is his right scapula. This is on the back. The spine comes off the back. It terminates in the acromion process. It's kind of a swollen end here. When you turn the scapula sideways, there was the spine, and here's the acromion process up there. Here is the glenoid cavity. This is the socket for your humerus, your upper arm, to sit in, for the head to go in here. So it's a real shallow socket called the glenoid cavity. And above the glenoid cavity is a little pointed structure here called the coronoid process. Coronoid process. Actually, that's not right. That's the coracoid process. I gotta fix that. Coracoid process. We look at the fossa. A fossa is like a shallow area. So here's the spine, right? So the fossa that muscle fits in above that spine is called the supraspinous fossa. Above the spine fossa, or the fossa above the spine. Well, the one below it is this whole area here. It's called the infraspinous fossa. Infra is below. So it's the fossa below the spine. On the underside, this is up against your rib cage. This is the underside. Subscapular fossa. Sub, below, or under, scapula, on the underside of the scapula. So it's a fossa on the underside. This is what goes up against your rib cage. Subscapular fossa. We have some angles. Here's a superior angle up at the top, and here's the inferior angle at the bottom. So two angles where it bends, the superior angle and the inferior angle. And you see this is shaped like a triangle, so we're going to look at the borders next. And here they are. Now look at this scapula. Let's just talk about something first. The spine comes off back, and right over here, where my hand is, that's the glenoid cavity there. So your arm is going to be hanging off over here. Now if that's the case, this is the lateral border. Lateral border. It could also be called the axillary border because of your armpit. And the opposite side is the medial border, or you could call it the vertebral border. And then the top one's called the superior border. So we have three borders, three sides to this triangle: superior border, axillary or lateral border, and medial or vertebral border. Now look to the left on your notes, and you'll see the clavicle. The clavicle is your collarbone. It's your collarbone. Now I'm going to go over the parts here, but it's going to be kind of hard to really put this on a test that you can't see the bone itself, like in person. because the pictures just don't quite do it justice, okay? So right now, let's just know that this is a clavicle, okay? You really need to have one in your hands to see that this is flat on this end, and this is kind of a swollen end here. So one end is flat, one is swollen. So at this point, just understand those are called the clavicles, okay? Because this won't make any sense because the three-dimensional is not there. So let's move to the humerus. The humerus is the upper arm bone. Okay, this is the anterior surface, this is the posterior surface. If you're looking down at your elbow, this is the surface you're seeing, that where your muscles are on top. This is the bend of your elbow. This is the back of your elbow on the back side. This is the posterior surface viewpoint. So if you look at your humerus here on your list, we have the head, which is the ball. This head goes in the glenoid cavity of the scapula. So that's the head. And below a head you have a neck. Well, there's a little rim right here at the base of this head, and it's called the anatomical neck because it does have a little rim there. But below that, this is actually called the surgical neck here. Surgical neck, and it's probably because maybe you have a lot of bone breaks there. I don't know. That's called the surgical neck. Now that's on the posterior side. We're looking here on the front side. You have these bumps, a big bump here and a little bump here. One's larger and above the other one. The one on top is called the greater tubercle. The one on the bottom is the lesser tubercle. Greater tubercle, a little bump, and a smaller one, the lesser tubercle. And this little groove in between them called the intertubercular groove, which means the groove in between the tubercles. Intertubercular groove. There's a rough spot on the, it's kind of the lateral side of this bone. This is where your deltoid muscle inserts. If you hold your arm out to the side, you'll feel that on your shoulder, going out to your arm, there's a triangular shaped muscle there. It's called the deltoid muscle. This is where it inserts, and when it contracts, your arm is raised up away from your side. So this rough area here is called the deltoid tuberosity. Down toward this end of the bone, let's look over here. There's going to be two structures, and you can see over here it's kind of a marble shape, and I've got it circled here. That's called the capitulum. It's a round, smooth surface like a head. That's what it means. Capita means head, so it's a round, smooth surface. And the one over here is called the trochlea. It has a raised edge, a trough, and a raised edge. Okay, it looks like almost like a spool of thread. But the word trochlea means pulley, so it looks like a pulley that a belt would go through, or a pulley you would use to raise water up out of a well. The rope goes in the little wheel with the groove in the middle of it. So this structure here is called the trochlea. This round one's called the capitulum. Above the capitulum is where the bone called the radius, when you bend your arm, part of the head goes up into a little fossa here called the radiofossa, and above the trochlea, a little structure called the coronoid process goes in this coronoid fossa. Probably won't ask you these on a test, okay? On the back side, though, there's the olecranon fossa. It's a big, deep one. This is where your elbow goes when you straighten your arm. It goes up into this fossa here. Your elbow is called the coronoid process, and it's on one of your forearm bones. And it goes, what's called the olecranon process, I'm sorry, that's your elbow. And so it goes up into this olecranon fossa when you straighten your arm. Here are the two bones of your forearm. The radius is the one we're looking at first. It's this one right here. It's on the thumb side. So if you hold your arm with your palm up and you're looking at your forearm, this radius is on the thumb side. They run parallel. This is the radius. And this head of the radius is what articulates with that capitulum. And below a head is a neck. And so it's a little constricted portion here, the neck of the radius. And then you got a little bump there called the radial tuberosity. And your biceps muscle is what will insert there. And if you hold your arm out and you feel in your elbow, you'll feel a little tendon there. That's the tendon that inserts on this radial tuberosity. And all the way to the other end comes to a point. That's the styloid process. And then there's a little ulnar notch. So styloid process, the radius, that's good to know. The ulna, this is your bone on your little finger side when your palm is up. Here is the trochlear notch, is actually this space right here. This is called the olecranon process on top, and the coronoid process is shaped like a claw. And there's a shallow spot in the middle, that's the notch. So that needs to come down just a little bit. And down here at the end is the head, and it has a little styloid process on it also. So you'll probably, for the online class, you'll probably just need to know radius and ulna, okay? Radius and ulna. Bones of the hand. So you look over here where you see carpal bones. The carpal bones are your wrist bones. And there's going to be 8 carpal bones here. And we're going to learn those 8 bones. The next long bones after the carpal bones, the first long bones, these are called metacarpals. This is what forms your palm. And you can see over here, that's what forms your palm. These bones have tissue around them that forms your palm. And then your fingers are called your phalanges. And you see that each of your fingers has 3 phalanx, a proximal, middle, and a distal, except for your thumb. Your thumb only has a proximal and a distal phalanx. So your phalanges are your fingers. The first bones after wrist bones are called your metacarpals, and your wrist bones are called your carpals. So we're going to look at these carpal bones. In fact, look at your next slide here. See that right there? That's a ring. Someone's wearing a ring. I have these partitioned off, the phalanges, the fingers, the metacarpals, and the carpals. Okay, so I've got them grouped for you. The wrist bones are the carpals, the first long bones after that form your palm, metacarpals, and your fingers are your phalanges. So let's look at these carpal bones. There are 2 rows. There's a proximal row and a distal row. Here's the proximal row here. It's closest to your point of attachment, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 in the proximal row. We'll see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 in the distal row. And the way you do this is you always start with the thumb side. Always start on the thumb side. It doesn't matter which direction your hand is turned, palm up or palm down. If you start on the thumb side, you can get them all every time. So the proximal row, the one closest to your elbow, let's say, you start off on the thumb side, and the first one is the navicular. Navicular. It has a little shallow spot right I'm pointing to, which reminded him of like a little canoe. And to navigate is to, you navigate canoes and boats and stuff like that. So the first one's navicular. The second one's called the lunate. It's shaped like a half moon. You can't see it because it's forming the cup around this bone, but it's shaped like a little half moon. And so they call it the lunate. The triquetral or triangular, it looks like a little rock that has 3 sides to it. So it does have a shape when you take them off the model. And then the last one is the pisiform, which means P, like an English P. Now, when I was going to school, my instructor had a little mnemonic poem that helped you remember these. And the poem goes, sailing along, that's to navigate, so that's navicular. Sailing along by the light of the moon, Luna is moon, right? Using a triangle, that's what they use to spot the stars, it's a little triangular structure they look up at the stars with. Over the side of the boat, pisiform sounds like a slang word for peeing, and the word means pee, right? So sailing along to navigate by the light of the moon, lunate, using a triangle, triangular, over the side of the boat, pisiform. Well, that's the proximal row. The distal row is not too bad. Let's look at those. You have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you have 2 that are traps, trapezium and trapezoid, and I figured out a real easy way to keep those 2 straight, which one's which. And here's how you do it. At the base of the thumb is the trapezium. The base of the thumb is the trapezium. So the one next to that's a trapezoid. So you don't get those 2 mixed up. The base of the thumb is a trapezium. Sounds alike. So this one's a trapezoid. It's just his name. Capitate. This is a real smooth surface here. Reminded him of a head again. Capitus. So capitate. And this one over here, hamate. It's hard to see, but this is a little stem coming off of this bone. You could grab it like a hammer and, hammer something with it. So you can grab this and use that for a hammer. So trapezium at the base of the thumb, that means trapezoid is the next one. Capitate, nice smooth round head here, capitate. And then hamate, has a little handle you could use for like hammering. And that happens to be the end of this PowerPoint. So that'll be the end of this one.